correcting.
My Lords, I think it's perhaps particularly appropriate that I rise to follow the Noble Lord Garnier as a way of highlighting the fact that the amendments in this group addressing restorative justice, a number of which are in my name but have already been introduced by the Noble and Right Reverend Prelate Lord Harries, are not party political. This is a conviction, an understanding, a belief that goes right across the political spectrum, and as the Noble Lord Garnier said, has very much arisen from practical experience. And indeed, speaking to other noble lords in the corridors who've seen the amendments that I've put down here, it's very much people who say, well, I wasn't really convinced, and then I saw restorative justice in action, and now I'm totally a convert to this idea. So I think it is very clear that the government is getting a message from right across your Lordship's house that, as the Noble and Right Reverend Lord Harries said, what was said in the other place, the idea that, oh, well, we can put something in the code, really is not going to do it. We need to see this on the face of the bill as a step forward. Now, I went through this at second reading, so I won't repeat it all, but where you look at what the government is doing now, what the government's offering now, the sort of wording, it's a suggestion that restorative justice is nice when we can find the resources. So you might be lucky enough that there might be the resources available in your area, or you might not be lucky enough. And that really is simply not good enough. Now, just to very briefly say that I very much agree with all of the amendments in this group and echo the comments about Amendment 13. The Noble Lady Baroness Gohier has, I think, surely this is something the government can pick up because it's such an obvious something that needs to be sorted out. But to actually go through my amendments, which are 16, 22, 32 and 52, and I acknowledge that in preparing for this I had considerable support from the Restorative Justice for All International Institute. And there's some minor differences between 14 and 16. I don't here necessarily agree with the Noble Lord Garnier that the words "and appropriate" need to be in there. My amendment says victims should be able to access, but this is a fine legal point, and I'm not particularly attached to either one wording or the other of either Amendment 14 or 16. But what we are saying here, and this may not entirely be a fashionable thing to say, but we're focusing on giving victims the choice, the opportunity to access restorative justice. And this is something which is actually covered by 2 international agreements. As I said, possibly not a very fashionable thing to say to the government, but I will anyway. The Victims Directive 2012-29 EU and the Council of Europe Recommendation CM-REC 2018-8. These 2 substantial international agreements establish the right to restorative justice as a complement to traditional criminal justice proceedings or as an alternative to them. Now, my Amendment 22 introduces something potentially onto the face of the bill and into UK law, which I stress I am not a lawyer, but as my understanding is that we don't really have a substantive definition of restorative justice. I'm not going to say this is the substantive definition, but I think I would put to the government and to your Lordship's house that this is something we should set out what this exactly means. And this is a process that enables those harmed by crime and those responsible for that harm, if they both freely consent, to participate actively in the resolution of matters arising from the offence, through the help of a trained and impartial third party, picking up the point that the Noble Lord Garnier made, that this is something that does require real skill and understanding and wisdom, even, to be able to facilitate such a process. Now, Amendment 32, also in my name, picks up a point reflecting what the Right Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of Manchester, was saying. It's absolutely no use at all to have something there unless people know that is it available to them. And that doesn't mean just someone's been handed a leaflet, as the Right Reverend Prelate said, but that really people are genuinely signposted and has it explained to them. It may be a term that people are entirely unfamiliar with, restorative justice. This needs to put on the face of the bill the right to really be signposted towards it. And finally, the Amendment 52 And this really makes this complete package in terms of restorative justice. The Secretary of State must publish guidance about restorative justice providers, their roles, services and standards, and ensure that it is offered. So this is creating an actual responsibility for the government on the face of the bill, which I think it's very clear. And I think, picking up the point from the Noble Lord Gagnier, we have an enormous problem, of course, with our massively overcrowded prisons. We have a problem with crime. We have a problem with recidivism. This is, in the context we're talking about in this bill, a service for victims, something that can be a great help and support to victims, but it's also something that can help all of our society and address some of the really pressing issues that we now face.
My Lords, I rise in support of all the amendments in this grouping.